Today we're going to take a look back at one of the bigger trades we've seen in the NHL in the past few seasons. We're going to take a look at Seth Jones going from Columbus to Chicago. That trade is now finally complete with the 2022 first-round pick going to Columbus to settle things up. So let's take a look at how the deal went out on both sides now that it's fully complete, coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're going to take a look back at the Seth Jones trade. It was a pretty significant monster deal involving several pieces going in either direction. Many of those pieces at the time, of course, we couldn't put a name to them because some of those pieces were pretty high draft picks, and obviously it can take time to determine who really wins the trade. So I decided that this is something that I think would be fun to take a look back on. We often talk a lot about the trade rumors. We talk about trades when they happen. Sometimes we talk about trades that almost happen. Why not take a look back at some of these trades and see how they fully completed once all the picks are put in place and things like that? Sometimes you see a deal go down and you don't really know the full outcome of all the players involved. Sometimes it can be 6 months, a year, or two, just depending on what is involved for draft picks and how they were, put to use, moved again. There's all kinds of moving parts here. So, of course, at the time, I think it's fair to say we thought Columbus got a pretty good haul for their top defenseman at the time. Chicago did give up a lot to acquire Seth Jones and, of course, immediately signed him to a mega long-term contract extension. Things are very, very different today in Chicago than they were when Seth Jones first landed. There's no doubt. Of course, back then, the GM was still Stan Bowman. That was before everything went down with the Kyle Beach saga. And, of course, lots of jobs were lost over those investigation results and outcomes. But ultimately, Seth Jones went to a Chicago Blackhawks team that he thought and Stan Bowman thought could be contenders. To be honest, I really thought at the time that Bowman was a little bit crazy thinking that they could really make a couple of moves like they did. They brought in Seth Jones. They brought in Marc-Andre Fleury. They tried to kind of retool on the fly, and by the sounds of what he thought, they could be not only playoff contenders, but maybe even contend for a cup. And I personally did not have any confidence in that. And now look at them now. They are a team that's taking it down to the bare bones here. Bowman's, of course, been out of a job for some time. And Seth Jones is soon going to be one of probably the only long-term contract on this team. And I do have to wonder if he greatly regrets the moves that he made here. Obviously, Seth Jones was a big piece of the Columbus Blue Jackets blue line, one of the top defenders in the NHL for a period of time there. And obviously, before his time in Columbus, he was originally drafted by Nashville. He was in the conversation for being a first overall selection of his draft year. He did fall a few spots, just like we saw happen to Shea right here. Went to Nashville, was involved in a big trade there early in his career where the Jackets and the Predators swapped to him for Ryan Johansson going the other way. So Nashville gets Johansson, Columbus gets Jones, and it worked out pretty well for both sides there for a while. Then unfortunately, near the end of Seth Jones' last contract, he informed Jarmo Kekalainen and the Blue Jackets going into the final year of his contract, because they wanted to talk extension with him, that he was not interested in re-signing and that he wanted to test free agency, or they could consider trading him somewhere that he would sign a long-term deal. So there was speculation leading up to that Jones didn't want to stay in Columbus. There was obviously they had a stretch there where a lot of players were going to be departing. There was obviously talk, when you're looking at guys like Bobrovsky and Panarin, Jones and Dubois. So for them to land a new UFA recently like Johnny Gaudreau was really such a big deal for that fan base and organization to kind of show that, hey, you know what, there are some good players that would really like to come and play here in this great city. But the Seth Jones trades, of course, went down as a significant deal. The trade was this. It was Seth Jones going to the Chicago Blackhawks along with a 2021 first-round pick, which, of course, originally belonged to the Tampa Bay Lightning, as well as a 2022 sixth-round pick. And going back the other way to the Columbus Blue Jackets was young defenseman Adam Boqvist, a 2021 first-round pick, a 2022 first-round pick, and a 2021 second-round pick. So, of course, now we know who all those players turned out to be. So, of course, the first rounder that the Hawks get is much lower, of course, than the ones that the Jackets get. So Seth Jones is obviously the main piece. Signs an 8-year extension, $9.5 million, lots of signing bonus, no move clause, etc. And now he's going to probably be the only guy in the team with any kind of long-term future in Chicago once the Taves and Kane situations are resolved and they either move on or what have you after their final years of their contracts are coming up this year. Now, of course, that first rounder that the Blackhawks received, which originally belonged to Tampa Bay, they selected Nolan Allen. And in the 22 6th-round selection, they selected Dominic James. So at this point, those prospects are not, high-profile players. So we'll have to wait and see what they become down the road. But at least we now know who they are, where they're not as high picks. They're not coming into the organization here with such a high profile like some of these other players. But look at what the Jackets ended up getting now that we have all these picks made. The 2021 first rounder ended up being Cole Sillinger. He looks like he's going to be a real solid player for them for a long time to come. Played in the NHL right away after his draft season. Certainly was having a good rookie year. It looks like he's going to be a big part of that team's top 6 forward group for many years to come. Like, he's just a real solid, dynamic player. And of course, in 2021 as well, they also selected in the second round Alexei Heimosalmi. Now, of course, he may take some more time before he has an impact on the Jackets organization, but a decent looking prospect. And then they also got the 2022 first round pick, which did have some protection on it, but it ended up going to Columbus anyways, where they select David Jiricek, one of the top defensemen in the draft. So for Seth Jones, they get Adam Boqvist, Cole Sillinger, David Jiricek, and Alexei Heimosalmi. That is one heck of a return for the Blue Jackets. Like I said at the beginning of the video, we knew on day one that the Jackets did a good job and got a good return. Sometimes we say the best player in the trade, whatever they go to, that team wins the deal, at least on a short-term basis. At that point, some people might have said Chicago won the trade because they got Jones. But now I think we can look back and say there's no way Chicago wins that trade. That was an absolutely huge mistake on their part. No disrespect to Jones, and it's not necessarily even because of Jones, but look at the package they had to give up to get him. They gave up a lot of their future that they could greatly benefit from now, seeing as where the organization stands here today. I mean, maybe you can't see the future, you don't have a crystal ball, but in my opinion, Stan Bowen should have known better at that point that they were not a Seth Jones and a Marc-Andre Fleury away from becoming Stanley Cup contenders. They gave up way too much to bring those guys in. The Fleury trade was different because that was, pretty much next to nothing that they got him for. But they gave up the boatload here for Jones. So, like I said, look at where the future of each franchise is now. Chicago's being torn down. Columbus kind of went through a little bit of a rebuild there, but they're kind of working their way back up, and all these players are going to have an absolutely huge part of that. So now that this trade is complete, now I'd like to know your thoughts on who you think wins this deal. I think Columbus got themselves quite a haul and should well position themselves here for the future without Seth Jones while he has a long-term contract on a team in Chicago going nowhere, probably for the next 4 or 5 years as they go through this bare bones rebuild and tear down in the Windy City. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.